What's up, guys? Today on Sports Central, we're going over a college football game preview, and this one's going to be over 2019 Gasparilla Bowl between UCF and Marshall. And of course, in this game, it's kind of surprising that both these teams got paired up. Of course, UCF, I feel, kind of like the Appalachian State UAB game, is a little bit like they're a couple tiers higher than Marshall is. But then again, could Marshall pull an upset here in this one is the real question. That's what we're going over here today. Previous game for both these teams, UCF beat South Florida in the final game of the regular season 34-7, and then Marshall beat FIU, Florida International, 30-27. Some key stats from that game: UCF's Gasparilla, their quarterback, 23 for 39, 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pretty good game for him. Meanwhile, for Marshall, they had Knox, their running back, 33 attempts, 146 yards and 1 touchdown. This game's going to be on Monday, December 23rd, so just in a couple of days from now. 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Tampa, Florida. Spread currently says UCF by 17. So it is expecting it to be a pretty lopsided one. FPI is saying UCF 83%, and then Vegas is saying UCF by 15, 40-25. And I mean, really, I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, UCF is in probably the 6th best conference in the nation. Meanwhile, Marshall is in a conference that's much lower than that. And they also have one fewer loss. They got one fewer win than UCF does. UCF is 9-3 and Marshall is 8-4. So, and I mean, even looking at the stat comparison, it's pretty lopsided. UCF 43 points per game. They got 22.8 points allowed, 320 pass yards per game, 216 rush yards, then 119 yards allowed passing wise, and then 144 rushing yards. And then for Marshall, 25.8 points per game. They've got 23.1 points allowed per game, along with 200 pass yards per game on average, and they got 195 rush yards, 227 yards allowed on passing, and then 134 rush yards. So looking at that, their passing defense is absolutely horrible. And I'm sure Marshall fans could totally agree with that. 227 yards allowed per game. That's pretty excessive, and that's going to be tough, especially against a UCF team that is really good with passing. That's something you got to watch out for, because UCF averages 320 pass yards per game. And that's against every team in the AAC. Meanwhile, for Marshall, in a conference that is much lower than the AAC, they allow 227 pass yards per game. And so this could be a bit of a blowout here for UCF. If they can just totally shred up Marshall's secondary, I think that UCF wins this one big. But then again, if Marshall can have a good secondary, if their passing defense plays well, then again, I think it's possible Marshall could get an upset going. But yeah, I mean, you do have to have a much better offense than you've been playing all season. 25.8 points is not going to cut it here in this one, in my opinion. Yeah, then again, I mean, your margin between points per game and points allowed per game is only 2. So kind of looking at that as well, it shows that Marshall plays most of their games pretty close, even though they're 8-4. So kind of looking at that, yeah, I think that Marshall's a good team, don't get me wrong, but I think UCF is a much better team in this situation. Previous 5 games, both these teams, UCF beat South Florida. They also beat Tulane by 3, 34-31, pretty decent win. They lost to Tulsa on the road, 34-31 as well. They did beat Houston 44-29, and then they blew out Temple on the road, 63-21. That's a really good win in my opinion. That's probably one of their better wins of their season. I mean, you gotta consider Temple is not all that bad of a team. And so to beat them 63-21, that's a pretty good win. For Marshall, on the other hand, they've played most of their games pretty close. They did beat Florida International in overtime 30-27, lost to Charlotte by 11. They beat Louisiana Tech 31-10, beat Rice 20-7, and then also beat Western Kentucky by 3. So yeah, Marshall really doesn't have as good of their schedule just isn't as strong as UCF's is, for that matter. Some key points of this one: UCF has had a disappointing season, no doubt about that. I thought UCF would be a little bit lower than how they were last year, but I didn't expect UCF to be a 9-3 team. I thought that they could easily get 10 wins and possibly 11. But then again, I mean, with UCF, with the injuries and the players that they lost last season, it just didn't really align for them here this year. But yeah, UCF is heavily favored in this one. It'd be a big win for UCF. If they can get a win in this one, that could be big for their off-season, big for their recruiting as well. But yeah, both teams had decent Novembers overall. I mean, both teams did have a loss, but then again, I mean, yep, we're in the now. But yeah, Marshall needs their defense to play very well in this one, in my opinion. I mean, UCF, I feel like I mean, UCF really should not have much of a problem than Marshall's defense right now. But Marshall's defense really does need to, their defense has to play well in this one if they're even going to have a chance. Yeah, how would both teams win? I basically just told you what Marshall needs to do. They need to have a really uptight, really tough defense. But yeah, if UCF gets up, I'd say 2 to 3 touchdowns at some point in this game. I'm pretty sure it's going to be sold on UCF. I do not see Marshall making any big comeback in this one. But yeah, your final score for this one, I think UCF takes control and they beat up Marshall. Your halftime score 21-10 UCF. Your final score 42-20. UCF wins this one by 3 touchdowns plus an extra point. So I mean, what do you guys think on this game? Do you think that Marshall can bowl a big upset? I think if Marshall can win this one, I would be absolutely stunned. This would probably be one of the bigger upsets of this earlier part of the bowl season, in my opinion. I mean, UCF, this is probably one of my bigger locks of the offseason, or for the bowl season. I mean, I definitely think that UCF is they're heavily favored for me. But yeah, once again, I mean, anything can happen. It is bowl season, so yeah, once again, thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for more board previews coming up over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, once again, thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central.